Hello, and welcome to the CivilNet podcast. My name is Angela Hassasian, and joining me today is Nyree Abrahamian, the creative force behind the award-winning Country of Dust podcast, which shares stories, personal stories from Armenia and beyond. But she's here to tell us even more stories, this time as the co-author of Artsakh, A Taste of Home, which is a cookbook that preserves Artsakh through a series of stories and recipes. So thank you, Nyree, for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, Angela.
So the first question that I had was about when you went to Goris to first document the exodus, when you claimed in the book an instinct kind of kicked in, and at the very least listen to the stories of the people who had come from Artsakh. What was that process like? What did you end up learning while you were there?
So, yeah, I was in Goris actually in the week before the exodus. It was like the situation was quite tense. There was talk of potentially people who had been wounded or who were critically ill being allowed passage out. And, there were journalists, international journalists on the ground to document that. And so I was part of that effort. And basically when the border was opened, it all kind of happened very quickly. And as I was there documenting, it wasn't so much, there's a sense of you want to understand for yourself, like what is actually happening, but it's beyond what is happening. It's how does it feel? How does it feel for people going through it? It was a surreal moment, really. And it was this moment of, like, I've always believed in some level of ancestral memory, and that's moments like that is when you really feel that ancestral memory kicking in, because, witnessing car after truck after car after truck of people just clutching whatever they can carry with them, and thinking about what did you bring? What could you not bring? How did you make these decisions? In these moments, it was like something, I've grown up hearing about the genocide and other atrocities all my life. But then when you experience it like that firsthand, you get a better sense of like what that might have felt like for my great-grandparents. It was really this moment of like, it was kind of surreal because it's the scene unfolding in front of you that really feels like this is something that has happened before and is happening again before my eyes. And at the same time, people who are fleeing with whatever they can carry, they're sitting in the back of a truck and pull out a cell phone to like let their relative know that they arrived safely. And it's like seeing that a cell phone almost felt like there was a dissonance, right? Because it's like, I know this scene, but wait a minute, this is not a scene coming out of a history book. This is right now.
Anachronistic in a weird way.
And so it was just like, I can say for me, it gave me access to like a level of knowing what my ancestors have been through in a way that I didn't have access to before. So that's sort of what it has meant for me, but also, I felt a sense of mission to communicate what I'm seeing and what I'm experiencing and what people are telling me. There are the basic news stories that document the facts of what is happening, but then like this is a moment that has many layers to it, and like what do we do? What can we do? What can we say? How can we experience it and then communicate it in a way that the emotional resonance of it also carries.
And in your introduction, I found it interesting that you were talking about tense, in the sense that you write that Artsakh is in the present tense. Why is that choice of wording for you so important? I know that you get into it in the book itself, but yeah.
So, we were working on the book in the months after the ethnic cleansing of Artsakh, and meeting with women who are now spread out across Armenia, some of whom I knew from when I had visited them in Artsakh, some whom I was meeting for the first time. And they're still here. And the work that, I mean, the recipes that they make, the culture that they're representing is very much still here. And even thinking about this term preservation, which is true. This is a book that preserves recipes, but when it comes to anything in culture, whether it's language or food or, you know, or buildings, I think we need to think about that term preservation, because the idea, I mean, a cookbook is there for you to cook the recipes and have them live. The stories are there so that they continue to live. And I think I tend more towards the language of like culture, production, culture, like affirming the culture, affirming action, the elements of, like the life that is in them, affirming that life. And so that's why Artsakh is, it's a bizarre thing to talk about a place that many people that you know are from, have lived in their whole lives, that you've gone to frequently. It's sort of like, it's hard to wrap your head around talking about it in past tense. But I think it's not just like, it's not an act of, it's not denial. It's not like, but it's more of an insistence on the aspects of life that are there. Life is.
It still is. Yeah. Yeah. So this is, the book is a collection of stories, a collection of recipes and photo stories as well, visual storytelling as well. One of the stories that really struck me was Mariana Gabrielian's story. And she was talking about how basically she made a life for herself making Jengalov huts. And during the time that they had to leave, during the Exodus, the one thing that she demanded that she brings with her is the saj, which is, I don't know how to, it's not a frying pan. It's like
a cooking surface. It's like a griddle.
Yeah, it's a griddle. Yeah, like a griddle that she used to make Jengalov huts. What does her story really tell us about food and the role that it plays in the face of complete loss?
Yeah, I remember she was saying like her sons were like, "What are you? We only have so much room in the car," and the saj is big,
quite large,
clunky, and like, you know, technically you can buy one or have one made when you get to Armenia. But there's this real, I mean, there's the practical side of it, which is that's how she makes a living. That's how she's going to support herself. So Marina had, during the 2020 war, had been displaced to Armenia. She was in Yerevan, and first she was working in a kitchen in a restaurant in Yerevan, making Jengalov huts, and then she opened her own stand. And then when she moved back to Artsakh after the war ended, she's from Askeran, and so she continued her Jengalov huts business there, and was really developing, you know, ideas around it. So it was kind of like, this is her livelihood. So there's just that very practical thing. But there was something beyond that for her too. It's, you know, she lights up when she's making Jengalov huts. It's like, she's like, every time I do this, I'm transported home. Wow. And, you know, obviously that cooking mechanism and the meal Jengalov huts is so distinctly Artsakh. It was kind of like just this, I mean, it's a necessity financially, it's a necessity in terms of nutrition, but it was also like a real, the role that plays in her life is so much more than that.
It was like, there was a lot of symbolism in that, I felt too. And as I mentioned, the book, it's 3 forms of storytelling, which I find quite interesting. How do you feel like these 3 different elements kind of share their stories in a way that maybe one by itself wouldn't have been able to? Each standing alone, you know? Like,
so you mean like the stories, the recipes, and the photos? Yeah, I mean, they're all in service of telling these stories of women and the food they make and why it matters to them. And so, yeah, it like they speak to each other, right? So in the beginning of the book, I write about sort of like the pillars of Artsakh cuisine, the sense of connection to nature, which that's something that's thrown around a lot, but in Artsakh it's such a like it's so crucial to the way the cuisine is formed. It's really like what is growing here and what does it taste like and what does it go with, like that is the basic place that any recipe from Artsakh starts. And so the connection to nature, the sense of resourcefulness that comes from being for decades and centuries a mountainous, relatively isolated place that's gone through hardships. You know, this recent blockade was not the first or only blockade by any means that people even, you know, my age have lived through. And so a sense of like when resources are extremely limited, how do you not just like survive but make something of it? And the sense of like sharing and the communal aspect of food. And I can write about those things all I want, but then when you see it, when you see the look on someone's face as they're serving the food, and when you see the, you know, the abundance in the mountains, and then even in the recipes themselves, it's not a traditional cookbook in that you can't just like, you know, make a grocery list off of it if you're living in New York or Paris or somewhere and just go and make those things. A lot of the ingredients are very specific to the place. And so even in the way we presented the recipes, it's like, look, resourcefulness and ingenuity as part of this cuisine. So yeah, you might not find like kajup, or you might not find like dried cornelian cherries, you know, or like all of these other things that I don't even know the words for in English, but sort of innovate. And so, yeah, even the recipes serve the storytelling in that way, the way we present the recipes.
Exactly, yeah. And another thing, I mean, in most cultures, but in Armenia as well, food tends to be a little bit ritualistic. We have our, you know, traditions with khash in Armenia and things like that. Can you share an example from this recipe book that you've collected? Any specific food that are kind of tied to rituals in any sense?
Yeah, I mean, the first one that comes to mind is gurgut, which is like similar to herise. It's with like grains and barley and meat, and it just like cooks for a long time overnight. And so the woman who was describing it to me was telling me how it would be like, it was for special occasions and everyone gathers around and sort of like, you know, gets the ingredients together, and then you sleep, and then, you know, it cooks overnight. And so there's a whole sense of ritual behind it. But there were also a lot of just like, you know, personal, private home rituals that people described to me as they were telling me about the recipes. Like Christine provided the recipe for libashorva. It's like a bean soup. And you know, she was telling me how like it was like seasonal, right? And she could tell when her mom was cooking it, it would just like the smell would waft up to her room. And or like another recipe was for like these little confections that someone made for her brother's wedding in the 90s. But, you know, ingredients were so scarce that it was just like they brought together the most unconventional things and made something of it. So there's ritual behind that. She still makes it the way she did then.
Yeah.
So it's those kinds of rituals are the ones that are interesting to me, like these private family rituals that probably a lot of families have similar ones.
Would you say that there is a recipe in the book that would be like the ultimate comfort food for people from Artsakh?
I would ask people, like, I asked everyone, what's your favorite dish and what's your favorite, like, what's your comfort food? And it was different for everyone. Khashil is a big one.
Khashil.
It's like a porridge. So the wheat berry is like so crucial to so many of these dishes. So it's like the full grain of wheat. Okay. And actually an alternative title for the book was Every Part of the Grain. Interesting. Because it's like, so you take the full wheat berry and you roast it to put in the khashil, in this porridge. And then in the husks that fall off, you like roast them in a different way and you add salt and you make like, it's like something like a trail mix. And then the crumbs that are left behind from that, you mix with like mulberry syrup and you make a dessert with it. Wow. So it's really like
resourcefulness to the max.
Yeah. And so yeah, a lot of the recipes have to do with that one, that like the specific type of whole grain that you can't really find in stores in Armenia. So like one of the women in the book was actually preparing it that way and providing it to like there's a cafe that used to exist in Stepanakert that's now reopened in Yerevan. So she provides it to that cafe. So yeah, there's this.
And one of the goals, because I'm sure there were many, but one of the goals was to get these recipes into the kitchens worldwide. How do you hope that people will use this book to keep culture alive, even far from its land?
Yeah. So as I was mentioning before, like the recipes themselves are difficult to replicate exactly how they are, just because even in Yerevan, you can't find some of these ingredients. I hope that people will play with it. So, you know, like one of the ingredients that appears a lot in Artsakh cuisine is hon, cornelian. It's cornelian cherry, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And so it's used as a natural sort of like source of acidity and like tartness and sourness.
Okay.
So in a lot of dishes where you might, like you or I might put lemon for that acidity, that hon is used, right? And so it's like, well, what can you find that's kind of similar to that would carry the same effect? And I think it's more just, it's engaging with like the spirit behind them, the stories of the women who shared the recipes. I think whether it's like trying to replicate every recipe in the book or just like, yeah, learning the stories or in whatever way that it gets kept alive, even if it's just like learning the names of some of these ingredients, you know, like that's how culture lives. That culture lives by adapting. And so that's what I want. I want like, I don't have a specific way I want people to use the book. I just, as long as anybody is engaging with it, it's a way that culture lives and adapts.
And I guess people know you more for the podcast series Country of Dust, where there are also many different stories that are being shared from Armenia, Turkey. The list really does go on. Does Artsakh also make its appearance in the Country of Dust podcast?
Very much so. Actually, the war in 2020 and the aftermath, that was the impetus for the podcast. It was my co-producers and I being here in Armenia. It was like there's this very specific moment that we were living through collectively, and to try to communicate that to people, you know, not just like what has happened, what are the facts on the ground, but like what does it feel like for me, for other people I know, like what is the emotional resonance of this moment. At that point, it was this moment of like major uncertainty. And so that's why we started making the podcast. And so we just finished, actually just 2 days ago, we released the last episode of our second season. So 2 seasons are out. And there are stories that are directly connected to Artsakh. Like in season 1, we had one with Ashot, who we interviewed him several times over the course of a year, mainly during the blockade. And as the situation on the ground was shifting, like what that meant for him in his life. And then there was like a special episode we made right after. It was like actually while I was there at the end of September of 2023, as the forced exodus was happening. Our season was finished already our first season of the podcast, but it just felt like, in the same vein as this book, it felt like there's it's important to document the many different levels of this. And so literally on the side of the road, I did an interview with Gayane, who had just fled with her 2 young children and her family. And so it was kind of like that particular moment. And then in this new season, we have a follow-up episode with Gayane after having lived in Armenia and moved around the country several times, like what that experience has been like, which is something people often forget about. And then every other, I think it's impossible to talk about this moment in Armenia and for Armenians without Artsakh and what has transpired over the past few years, without that shaping the way we're experiencing all of these things. So it plays into so many of our episodes. Like one of them is with a young woman who did VOMA, the civilian military training, because, in the aftermath of the war, she felt helpless and she felt like there's a thing happening to me and my country. What can I do about it? And so, yeah, every single one of our episodes sort of feels like the thing that compelled us to do this was the war and everything that transpired after in Artsakh. And it's really like, I think it's shaping and coloring the way we're all experiencing life right now, and that comes through in our episodes.
I really want to thank you for taking the time to document all of these stories in whatever format that it may turn out to be. I think that it's extremely important to have and to share these stories. And I want to thank you for coming to CivilNet for this podcast interview with me.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. And thank you for watching CivilNet.